Hi, my name is Jaden Morin, and this is my final project for American government. I will be discussing the topic of terrorism and taking a closer look into how the United States funds the defense line for terrorism and the price it costs to defend and protect our country. Over the years, there has been an extreme amount of new technology, weapons, threats, and advancement in security due to terrorism. With this increase, the United States was forced to take more out of their budget in order to protect the country from the threat of terrorist attacks. Since September 11, 2001, security has skyrocketed, and the United States has gained a lot of seriousness when it comes to safety, especially when traveling. Terrorism is the unlawful use of violence or force over a person or property to intimidate a society or government to achieve a specific goal. Most of the time, the goal is related to politics, religion, or ideological objectives. Typically, terrorist attacks are targeted towards large groups of people or an area that has to do with their government. Terrorists attack large areas like this to make our safety be questioned. Threats and attacks that put our lives in danger strip the United States from their safety net. Some different parts of our society and government that play a part in terrorism, such as the FBI, whose number one priority is protecting the United States from terrorist attacks, and then social media, which has evolved and helped create communications and predictions for the attacks. Terrorism is broken down into many different categories, which means there are many more funds that need to be given to each category, because they all deal with different aspects. The three most common categories are international terrorism, domestic terrorism, and transnational terrorism. The issue with terrorism is that terrorists and terrorism threats have not only put the United States, but the entire world at risk. Because of the possibility of a terrorist attack, the United States must be on high alert at all times to ensure that they are prepared. Although being safe is the ideal image for every citizen and leader, safety comes with a huge price tag. Not only does the United States have to fund the entire country, but they have to make sure that there's enough money set aside to protect the land and its people within. Because of previous attacks, such as 9/11, the United States has had to up their defense budget tremendously, especially when it comes to travel safety. You ever go to the airport since the year of 2001 and have to spend hours going through security? Well, this is why. Terrorism has changed how our country defends, budgets, and acts. The issue with terrorism is the price it costs to defend it before it takes people's lives or ruins government buildings. The United States now sends billions of dollars just to be aware of threats and attacks even before they occur. This is a map that shows the impact of terrorism across the globe in the year of 2020. It is hard to read the scale, but the darker colors are very impacted by terrorism, and the lightest colors are the least impacted by terrorism. Although terrorism might not be projected across the news every day like COVID is or sports, terrorism plays a huge part in the United States government and takes a giant chunk of funding. As you can see, the United States is a darker shade of pink, meaning it is a medium category for being affected by terrorism. Yet we have to spend over $600 billion each year to protect our country from terrorism. Putting a price on terrorism. The price to defend terrorism seems to increase each year as more and more events take place and more technology is advancing. To defend terrorism, a lot of money must go to the military. The military spending is the second largest item in the federal budget. The first is Social Security. Out of the federal budget, more than $705 billion is outlined by the Department of Defense. On average, the United States spends around $934 billion a year on the military. To defend the Islamic State group, there is a $69 million budget and overseas contingency operations. There are many other agencies that are funded to protect our nation. These agencies combined get a budget of $228 billion. These agencies are the FBI, the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, Department of Veteran Affairs, and more. With the price being so high to defend against terrorism, it is hard to determine if there will be even more money budgeted to these areas in the future. Due to the threat of terrorism being so high, the United States must continue to fund and protect the country, even if it means adding to the nation's debt. Since the War on Terror, which was an international military campaign that was created after the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001, there has been $2 trillion added to the United States debt. The government's influence. The government plays a huge part in defending terrorism. The government is not just handing out money and hoping terrorism goes away. They are defending terrorism from many different areas. The most important category of the government is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or also known as the FBI. Takes a huge part in protecting the country from terrorists and investigating the terrorists. The FBI relies on the public to help recognize potential lone offender attacks. They also use social media to try and target terrorists before the actions take place. The FBI neutralizes terrorist cells and operatives to help eliminate financing and other support given to foreign terrorist organizations. The OCO was talked about before, but the plans for the funding of the OCO seems to be limited to none for the year of 2021. The question that is asked is if the budget is enough. Is our nation doing the most that they can to protect the country from terrorism? Is enough money going towards terrorist defense? The answer is obviously based on opinions, but factually, the budget is enough. Defending the United States. Of course, we use technology for almost everything in our lives today. We must still recognize the actual weapons used to defend and protect our country. There are a lot of different changes that have been made to make our defense stronger. There has been an increase in spending on weapons by 75% in the past 20 years. This is a huge change in weapons. There are 4.4 million weapons used by the military to defend terrorism and protect the United States. Because of these needs, the military takes up 15% of the government's budget to help defend the country. The Patriot Act was created in 2001 to improve the abilities of the United States law enforcement to detect and deter terrorism. It punishes terrorist acts in the United States and around the world. And lastly, the U.S. now has the ability to respond to risk and threats from terrorists before the actions take place with the use of technology and the help of other citizens. The cost to protect. Since the United States has realized how weak their security actually was, they have changed the airport security tremendously. Now there is an improved security screening where IDs are checked, shoes must be taken off, all baggage is checked, no liquids over a certain amount are allowed, special items are checked, pat-downs are enforced, and cockpit doors remain locked during flights. From 2002 to 2017, the United States spent 16% of its entire discretionary budget as a part of the counterterrorism fight. Counterterrorism includes homeland security, international funding programs, and the wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, which combined to cost $2.8 trillion. New technology and weapons. Since there has been more done to ensure safety in the United States, biological weapons, radiological weapons, chemical weapons, and nuclear weapons have been introduced. There is also an extreme amount of internet access that has allowed a person to reach anyone across the globe in just seconds. Because of this, communication is at an all-time high. Although there is already so much money being spent on weapons, technology like this seems to be basically free, especially when it comes to using apps. Our country is advancing one day at a time, even if the budget remains the same. For my interview, I conducted an interview with Detective and Sergeant Tom Flowers, who has worked for the Michigan State Police for many years. I asked him many different questions, such as how he felt about our nation's defense when the terrorist attacks occurred on 9/11, and what could have been improved to prevent these events from happening. Tom said that prior to 9/11, he would assume that our nation's defense was in great shape. On 9/11, our country had to realize we had more weak areas in our defense than we wanted to admit. It became obvious that our airport security measures had failed drastically. He said that he does not see the need to expand the budget of terrorism defense today because the country is much more secure now due to the changes that have already been made. Deeper into the interview, I asked some different questions. In response to me asking how terrorism affects his job, he said that his job handles examining any evidence that would be used in terrorist activity, but the Michigan State Police has other units that deal with domestic terrorism. Tom said the MSP has a Homeland Security Division that works on a daily basis to prevent terrorism. Certain groups, like the one that group that recently planned to kidnap the governor, are tracked through several different systems and methods to try and prevent their terrorist actions from ever actually occurring. This was a great interview. I chose to interview someone in Michigan because I wanted to show the reality of terrorism and how close it is to home, even though it seems like an attack like 9/11 could never happen here. There is much funding and hard work that goes into preventing terrorism to occur on a daily basis. It is a really behind-the-scenes action that seems to be overlooked until something so tragic like 9/11 occurs. For the line of defense, there is a $636 billion budget to help protect the country. Most of the budget is used to divide into categories, but the remains of the budget, if any, goes to readiness development. There is a constant circle in our government that ensures on a day-to-day basis that terrorism does not occur or threaten the lives of citizens. Although it costs billions and sometimes trillions to protect the land, it is a must. Because of the threat of terrorism, there has been a lot of research conducted to help understand why it occurs, who the terrorists are, and what can be done to prevent it. This saves a lot of money because the country is not blindsided and shocked after terrorist events occur, just like the country was after 9/11. To bring awareness to the worst international terrorist attack in history, the attacks on September 11, 2001 changed the United States. It not only took the lives of 2,977 people, but it made our country lose billions of dollars. But on the plus side to this attack, it opened the eyes of the defense system and made them realize that there was not enough that they were doing to protect the country. Because of this, billions of dollars were added to the defense budgets. Not only did the airport security increase, like I talked about earlier, but all budgets of defense-related agencies skyrocketed. There was $40 billion in insurance losses, making this terrorist attack one of the largest insurance events to ever occur. The United States government categorizes terrorism in many different ways, just like they categorize each defense organization based on what they target. There are three main types of terrorism, but there's also international, domestic, transnational, national, revolutionary, reactionary, and religious terrorism. Some factors that lead to terrorism. The biggest question that is asked is how can we prevent terrorism from happening? With the funds that are given to help protect our country, there has been enough changes made to ensure that terrorism will occur less. It obviously does not eliminate terrorism attacks completely, but it limits the chances of them happening. Some factors that lead to terrorism are poverty, inequality, globalization, and technology. Obviously, we do not know why people try to kill or harm others, but there are some issues that we can take guesses on. Most of the time, terrorists target big groups or government buildings to make the United States feel at risk and unsafe in their own homes. This is a graph that shows the financial cost of war on terror. As you can see, the prices keep going up. In the year of 2020, the price is $164.6 billion, and in the year of 2001, it was $22.9 billion. This is a $145.5 billion difference in just 19 years. The future of terrorism. In the future, there is no evidence shown of an increased budget to these areas. It seems to all remain the same or change by small amounts. There are many new developments to protect the United States, but developing a stronger defense seems to have already been reached. It can only get better from here as far as the future attacks. It is almost certain that an attack like the one on 9/11 will never happen again because of the changes in security. In conclusion, terrorism costs a hefty amount of money. It is unsure if the budgets will change for terrorism defense, but as of now, it looks like it will not change unless there is another huge attack. Our nation will forever be handing over money to ensure protection from another tragic incident. These are the sources I used to gain more knowledge about my topic. The first source talks about the Patriot Act. The second source I used was from the Balance, and it mapped out the military budget and spending. The third source was from the official Department of Justice. The fourth source was from Big Think. The fifth source was from the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. The sixth source was from the Defense News. The seventh source explains the future for technology. The eighth source was from JSTOR. The ninth source I used was from Homeland Security, and the 10th source was from the FBI's website. Lastly, the 11th source I used was from JSTOR. JSTOR is used to target and advance search and help ensure that the research will be legit, knowledgeable, and factual. MCC uses JSTOR to ensure the best websites and data for students to use in order to make learning easier and more efficient.